Hey everybody, I'm that one guy, and I wanted to create a series of videos to go over the Weakauras I've created. The whole purpose of the Weakauras is obviously to help you better understand your spec and hopefully help you play better as a result, but also to gamify the game. Because WoW does present you with some spell alerts for the specs you play, but not all. And so that leaves you looking for ways to identify if a certain buff or debuff is active. And that's where Weakauras can come in play. And I wanted to do more than just have an icon with a timer in it, right? I wanted to try to present you with visual effects that make it feel more like a video game and immerse you more into the spec you're playing. At least that's the idea. So in these videos, I'm going to go over the Weakauras I've created, how I intend for them to work, and show you how you can modify them if you'd like. So whether you've already found my Weakauras, or you're looking for some for a certain spec, or you just want to have a better idea of how Weakauras work in general, hopefully these videos will help you with that. We're going to do Unholy DKs, UHDK. I will say that when I was making Death Knights, I've done all three at this point, that it was a little tricky to figure out where I wanted to put stuff and what exactly I wanted to track, because all of them, or at least the two DPS specs, Frost and Unholy, have so many different little things. Unholy has 3 different resources you want to track. Frost has 2. Both of them have, debuffs that you want active on your target, as well as other little mini cooldowns and buffs for yourself to track. It only just then gets amplified by the hero talents. So this is still maybe like a work in progress, and as I get more feedback or playtest it more, I might change or move stuff around. But as of now, this is what I got. So let's take a look. All right, this would be if you had absolutely everything active all at the same time, which you won't. We're just going to look at the base Unholy stuff and then come back and look at the hero talents. We'll start with just like the general Death Knight things. This I have set to load as never. What it does is it changes depending on the spec that you're in for Death Knight, but it will match the runes of the spec that you're in, right? So for Unholy, it's green with that rune inside of it that looks like a U. Sometimes I'm not that clever. And what it'll do is when you use those runes, behind it will be a grayed out version of the same thing, just without that rune letter inside of it, and instead will be the number related to the cooldown of that rune. I borrowed that from someone else. But I felt like as I played that just put too much on the screen. Like I was looking at it covered up some stuff, but two, it's just like I was looking at the cooldowns of each rune, and it didn't really do much for me in terms of like helping me anticipate my gameplay, because it just meant like, all right, there's 3 seconds left until I could do anything, and I just figure you'd get the same effect of either there's a rune there or there's not. But this is there if you like that and you want to know, if you've got used to that on other things, or you just want to know what the cooldowns of all the other runes are. You can click on this one, DK Rune CD, and go to the load tab and uncheck the never box, right? This just means it will never load, and if you want to see it, you'd uncheck that never box. Runic Power changes colors depending on the spec you're in, and I also have it set right now for at least Frost and Unholy that once you get over 80 Runic Power, right, and are approaching the cap, to just turn a darker color of the same things. Like this starts out kind of like a light green. When you get over 80, it's dark green. Just another visual effect that like, hey, you're about to cap on Runic Power. Death and Decay, when the buff is active, you will see this black and red progress bar at the bottom, indicating how much time is left on that buff for you. When it glows like that red glow around it, that means that the buff is not active and that you have 1 or more charges of Death and Decay. Basically just like another example for you to be able to remind yourself to cast Death and Decay. You don't have the buff, but you do have a charge, that'll show up. Alright, and then Unholy Strength, I only have that set to load for a specific loadout in Frost. With that set of hero talents, because as I was reading through like cooldown usage and stuff, it didn't sound like anything else really cared about tracking it except for one specific time, and that seems to be true when you were in that hero talent. So if you want to know when you have Unholy Strength active, you can again come in here and change the load conditions. You uncheck that hero talent and change the class and specialization to Unholy, and then you can know when you have the buff. Otherwise, like I said, there was only one specific time when it felt like it needed to be known. And then just a cast bar, changes colors depending on the spec you're in. As for Unholy stuff itself, right, we're going to uncheck that so I don't have to stare at it the whole time. Okay. The runes, again, I change them to match the spec that you're in, and then they have a different rune inside to match the spec that you are. All right, and then it's pretty simple. It goes up to 6, goes down to none. And then Unholy Assault, just this, I think, cool looking little image of a green eyeball with some smoke coming off of it. Just kind of like, I feel it matches the theme. It's an eyeball for the icon, and then green for Unholy, right? So you'll see that when the buff is active, right? I don't have anything to like track it on screen to let you know when it's off cooldown. That's typically how I do things when they are 1.5 minutes or longer, unless they have a CDR. But if it's 1.5 minutes or longer, plenty of time going on for you to just kind of glance at that. Except for the fact that I will say that Unholy and Frost just have so many cooldowns. We will track some, and if you feel like it would be nice to know when that's off cooldown, what I would probably do is just modify this Weakura to show that. So if that's some functionality you think would be good for Unholy, just let me know in the comments and I can tweak that. Right, so this is a work in progress. Dark Transformation, when it's off cooldown, you'll see that. And look, that's what I mean, it turns gray white. Still looks pretty cool. But when Dark Transformation is off cooldown, you will see that up top. Kind of hard to miss. And then when you've activated Dark Transformation, you'll see a progress bar down here, letting you know how much time is left on it, and essentially almost how much time has passed since you started it. Apocalypse, when it's off cooldown, you'll see that right there. The reason it's there is because that is also where I have your festering wounds being tracked. Okay, because Apocalypse reads pop up to 4 festering wounds, so you need festering wounds to be able to activate it. So if you see that icon but have no purple dots, you have no festering wounds, you can't use it. If you see that icon and you only have 1 festering wound, I think ideally you get up to 4 so you can pop it. But this is also just a way for you to track how many festering wounds you have. And again, I like things kind of being up here, so I can look at my character, I can look at the game, I can see what's happening. And because there's some cool combat visuals and combat effects that you miss if you're just staring at your action bars down here the whole time. But pretty easy to just see how many runes you have, which runic power is, and how many festering runes you have up, all just in this little info. And then again, Dark Transformation just says use it on cooldown, and then Apocalypse, same thing, as long as you have your festering runes, which you'll now know at the same time. Soul Reaper, undecided if I want to keep that one or not. It's just in there for now. It looked like they had conditions for when to use it, and that's what I said on there as well. If your target is at 35% or less HP and Soul Reaper is off cooldown, you'll see those little ghosts, those little spirits. So maybe it's on brand for you, maybe you like it. I'm torn, right? It doesn't necessarily go with the rest of it, but I leave it there just for tracking purposes. If you want to change the color of it, you'd click on it and go to the display tab, and then you click on color and make it whatever you want. If you wanted to delete it, you'd right click and delete children and group. If you weren't sure if you liked it and you just wanted to hang on to it until you decide for later, you'd go to the load tab and check the never box, and then it will not appear on your screen, but it will stay in the Weakura pack. Deleting it doesn't hurt anything. You'd only want to check the never box if you're like, maybe I'll like it, maybe I'll decide I do want something like that and don't want to have to re-download it. Sudden Doom, the base spell alert that Unholy has, the only spell alert that I noticed Unholy has, is Sudden Doom. They just turn a gray white when there is 3 seconds or less on them, letting you know they're about to expire. Death Rot, when you have that buff active, it will show you the number of stacks that you have. Right? When it's grayed out, it means it's not active, and then when it is active, it'll be filled in with a color, but it won't show you the duration. It'll just show you the number of stacks, because I have it set to glow at 3.5 or less seconds. So when there's 3.5 or less left on the buff, it'll glow, letting you know you need to refresh it if you're able to. And then the same is going to be true for Plaguebringer and Rotten Touch, right? I have them both set to glow when there's 3.5 seconds or less. If you wanted to change that, you'd go to the conditions tab of any of them, right? You'd click on any of them, go to the conditions tab, and you'll see they all have the same condition. To when the remaining duration is less than or equal to 3.5 seconds, turn the glow on, right? If you wanted to change when that glow turns on, or you don't care, you can delete it. But if you want to change when it starts to glow like that, you would change how much time right there, right? You want 5 seconds, 2 seconds, 10 seconds, whatever. Okay, and the reason that Plaguebringer and Rotten Touch are on top of each other, they are right in the same spot. It says, I was reading through the guide, it looked like the only time they mentioned keeping track of Rotten Touch was when you took Plaguebringer and not the other hero talent choice there. because if you had Plaguebringer, that was what you were tracking. So if you need to know all 3 of these, you would have to move Plaguebringer or Rotten Touch so that it's visible. But otherwise, Rotten Touch is only going to load when you are not talented into Plaguebringer, right? When you're instead talented into Clawing Shadows, basically. That was the only time I noticed that was being tracked. If you know better, again, we can either uncheck that and it'll be loaded, even if you are talented into Plaguebringer, or you can move it and change some stuff. Virulent Plague isn't going to show up on screen right now, but what it does is when it is not active on your target, you will see a white box appear, right, around these icons. For no other reason other than I'm a little OCD and I really like symmetry. I couldn't put a white box around one icon and not the other because then it wouldn't be even on both sides. So they both have a white box just for, visual effects and visual aid. And then when Virulent Plague is active, that box will be green and, progressing down to 0. Okay, so that's it for like the Unholy based stuff. Then you mix in the hero talents, right? Rider, all I did was essentially just make the colored icon of the hero talent, letting you know which rider is active. And you can see here when you push this plus sign, Mograine is red, Nazgrim is that yellowish green, Trollbane is blue, Whitemane is that purplish pink. I don't have anything tracking like the buffs or debuffs they provide. If that's something you want to know, you can add that, right? If it feels like that's super important to know. But I didn't notice any real major conditions in the guide or anything related to like, hey, when this person's active, make sure you do this, other than Trollbane making sure you're casting or you're attacking the target that he put his Chains of Ice on. It's like, well, when Trollbane is active, he's putting Chains of Ice on your target. So that's just kind of happening. But if you'd like to track that, that's possible. Same thing goes for any of the other buffs or debuffs that they add. I just figured it's kind of nice to know that they are summoned, other than, hey, there's now a horse visual on your screen. There's a Death Knight on a horse, which again, you'll notice because your eyes will be up here instead of down here. If you were looking down here the whole time, you'd never know you summoned a horseman. You maybe hear a horse neigh, but you never get to see it. That's, again, why I wanted to move all my visuals up here and try to keep my eyes up here so I can see the game, because there's some pretty cool combat effects they added in, right? So that's Rider of the Apocalypse if you're talented into that hero talent. And then this is Sand Lane. Sand Lane adds a lot. So we'll go through Sand Lane. Gift of the Sand Lane, right? When Gift of the Sand Lane is active, you will see these red, kind of cool looking images on the right and left that progress down to 0. So you know how much time is left on your Gift of Sand Lane. Essence of the Blood Queen will appear as a circular texture right here, ticking down to 0. If you don't like where that is, right, you're like, hey, that's like right, in the middle of everything, I don't really care for it. You'd click on Essence of the Blood Queen and go to Position and Size settings, and you'd change its X and Y offset, all right? But the reason it is right there is because of Vampiric Strike, all right? Boop, bloop, bloop. There we go. Vampiric Strike. When that's active, right, you'll see that icon, right? When it has replaced your Scourge Strike or your Clawing Shadows, which again, I don't think you talented the Clawing Shadows when you are in Sand Lane, but when it is available to be used, you will see that icon right there, letting you know that Vampiric Strike is up. And that's also why Essence of the Blood Queen is right around it, is because using Vampiric Strike refreshes or activates the duration of that. So they're related to each other. Infliction of Sorrow is in the same spot. If you don't like that, right, we can move it or change it. But basically, after your Gift of Sand Lane ends, you get Infliction of Sorrow, just a one-time thing. I thought, hey, let's just basically do the exact same effect, but slightly different colors and upside down. Right, so that's Infliction of Sorrow. That's Vampiric Strike. And then this would be your Blood Beast. Whenever you activate a Blood Beast, you will see that right inside your Sudden Doom, and it ticks down for the 10 seconds. So whenever you've got a Blood Beast up, you will see those icons just inside your Sudden Doom, and then as it's expiring or going to explode, right, this will hit 0. Okay, so that would be everything for Unholy and its hero talents. I'm going to then like clunkily play through both hero talents so you can kind of see kind of like what it looks like as opposed to just having all of this on your screen. And I think I'm talented into Sand Lane right now, so that's going to be the one we do. And you will see Soul Reaper pop up because this is an old dummy from Legion, so it will nearly instantly go under 35% health. But as you can see, there's nothing on your screen until you are in combat, right? As soon as you activate combat, you're going to see your runes. You're going to see that these are not active. And look, we're getting our sudden doom procs. There's that white box indicating that Virulent Plague is not active. Our Festering Wounds, thanks Pet, and then basically our cooldowns are available to use. Again, nothing to tell you that, you know, Raise Abomination, A-Bomb Limb, or Unholy Assault are available and off cooldown because they are a minute and a half or longer. Again, if you disagree and you're like, no, I absolutely need to know when those are off cooldown, I need to know the second they're off cooldown, I don't want to look at my bars ever. Figure that out, okay? But for now, right, things won't pop up until you're in combat. There's all of our Festering Wounds, right, as you pop them, they go away. Pretty simple. Sudden Doom as you use it, voila. There is your Death Rot, right? There is your Scourge Strike, seeing it glows when it's going to expire, letting you know that you need to refresh it. Same thing is true for Death Rot. Glows when it's going to expire. Glows when it's going to expire. And that white box will turn green when Virulent Plague is active on your target, right? Glows. Oh, look, and I summoned a Blood Beast. And I have Essence of the Blood Queen, right? So Virulent Plague ticks down to not being there, and then a white box appears. So just, there's the visual for that, letting you know, hey, if you want to have Virulent Plague on your target, you don't have it without taking up too much space. It's just already in a place where you're tracking two other visuals, right? This again is our Death and Decay. It's glowing like that because we have one or more charges of Death and Decay, and the buff is not active. When the buff is active, it just shows you, right, the duration, the time left on your Death and Decay. And then when it expires, right, whenever the buff itself has expired from you, not just the ground indicator, if you have a charge available, it will glow like that. All right. And so, like I said, you can see the runes, you can see your runic power. When you get over 80, right, it turns a darker green, just another visual to let you know. And you may decide, like, that is far too small. Again, I kind of felt like as you're playing, you're keeping track of your runes and your runes and festering wounds. It's kind of hard to say together. And then just the runic power being right there. It doesn't need to be too giant and in your face, but that's just my opinion. There's Vampiric Strike, right? Letting you know it's active. And then when you use it, there's your Essence of the Blood Queen buff. And so you may decide that's in a terrible spot and you may want to move that, or you may decide it needs to be a different texture entirely, but for now, that's what we got. When you use your Dark Transformation, there is your Gift of Sand Lane. We have Blood Beast. We just have Vampiric Strike forever because that's what Gift of Sand Lane does. It's gone. And I was impatient, so you didn't get to see Infliction of Sorrow, right? And in fact, actually, I know I don't have it because I am not level 80, so I don't have all the hero talents yet. But I promise you, if I change hero talents and spec into Infliction of Sorrow instead of Blood Beast, you'd see that there. And that's that, right? You can see we had Apocalypse available that I've just been sitting on. Again, this is not a guide on how to play Unholy DK well. This is just a video showing you the Weakauras and how they work and how you can use them for you. And again, maybe you really won't like this red circle, right? Because it is kind of right in the middle of what you're looking at, and that might be super obnoxious. And we can put it in an entirely different spot. We can move it up or to the sides, or like I said, maybe make an entirely different texture for it. But for now, it's right there because that's where Vampiric Strike will show up. And see Dark Transformation's back. There's my Gift of Sand Lane. I have Vampiric Strike forever. Hooray. Alright, and again, not a guide. If you want to know how to play Unholy DK and Sand Lane, super good. This would not be it. This is just me, again, showing how the Weakauras work. Okay? So that's it for Sand Lane. I'll show you Rider. There's really not that much different other than you're not going to have any of that red stuff that Sand Lane gives you. And instead, you're just going to get the little icons from the hero talent itself in a different color, letting you know when you've activated one of those champions. So I'm just going to switch real quick. Right after I spend my talents, there we go. Okay. So same deal, right? Whenever you are in combat, the stuff will show. Okay. When your Virulent Plague is not active, right? White. When it is active, green. And this one you're tracking Rotten Touch because we're in Clawing Shadows. But as for like the actual Rider, there we go. We got White Mane. And I know that because when I hear it, too, I see the little horse. But yeah, I had the little purple icon at the bottom, letting me know that good old white mane was active. All right. And you can only get the horses from spending runes, so it might take me a good minute to get through all of them. There we go. You got Nazgrim. And again, pops up. That pops up. So it's just another visual. Just a nice cue is to let you know that you have summoned a horse, and the icon with the color of letting you know which one has come up. So if there is anything you'd want to know about their gameplay, like Mograine does give you Death and Decay, right? So if you know you have him, oh, perfect timing. I don't need to cast Death and Decay, I'll use his. And it does work for his, right? This will let you know if you're in his, not just your own. So it works for both of them. But that's it for those hero talents, right? If you want to see when all of the horsemen are active, voila, all the colors and all the horsemen, right? And if you want to know, like I said, what their specific buffs and debuffs are, we can add those things, but otherwise, if they're active, the buffs and debuffs they provide you are also active. If there's anything you think I need to add, change, include, take out, whatever, let me know in the comments below. Otherwise, I hope you like it and have fun. Again, I hope you found that helpful. I do intend to make a Weakura pack for every spec. So if I haven't made one for the spec that you play or that you'd like to see, just comment that down below. Again, I do intend to make one for every spec, but if I see people asking for it or really wanting one, I'll probably get to it quicker than if I just do it on my slow, leisurely pace. I hope it will enhance your gameplay. Like I said, it's all about gamifying the game and making it more fun and more immersive for you, while also helping you improve as a player because the information that you need to react to is hopefully more readily available. If you have any other questions about this Weakura pack that you just watched or any other ones, again, please feel free to comment. I try to be as interactive as possible in my YouTube section. And that's it. I hope you have a great day.